this is not just another remake, but it's more than just funny. There are lessons to be learned from it, and it gives a different twist on that high school experience.
How do you revitalize a film 20 years later and make it relevant?
From the first moment, you're like, okay, this is different. It was a new experience and a great new telling of the story.
That reminded me of a Rocky movie. You're kind of rooting for her to get her revenge now.
There are so many characters to like for their own strangeness, and they're not like just these surface characters. Even the plastics have some sort of depth. It was definitely refreshing. It wasn't just rehashing the same thing. There was a lot to it. You love to hate her, but you also kind of love the character too.
A lot of interesting characters there. But that's kind of what high school is about.
There was a couple times where I laughed and nobody else laughed, and I'm wondering, was I the only one who picked up on that? How are you going to do this iconic character? There's lots of characters to like, even in their caricature aspects. Makes fun of and draws attention to those things, but also comes away with a decent message. You don't have to do qualifiers as to why people should or shouldn't see it. It's just like, yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah.
My name is Regina George.
You could be really hot if you change, everything.
Are you trying to make the rest of us feel dumb?
I'm not trying to, it's just happening.
Dear God, woman.
I could talk to him for you, if you want. You would do that for me? Trust me. We're gonna make her pay.
All we've done is make Regina hotter and revive the wet look.
Get in, loser.
This film was inspired by and is kind of based on the 2004 film of the same name. It had a huge following from that original release, and it had, stars in it like Rachel McAdams and Lindsay Lohan and Amanda Seyfried, and it was hugely popular. This film, it's different in the sense that it's a musical, but it's a musical that was inspired by a Broadway musical of the same name also. So they're all kind of tied together, and Tina Fey was involved in the original film and obviously this film as well. I remember seeing the original film vaguely. It's not something that necessarily stuck with me, and I was a super fan of it. I appreciated it, but I didn't really remember it a whole lot other than the people that were in it. Heath, you've seen it more recently and I guess have that much more familiarity with it.
Yeah, so I also wasn't a huge fan, but I did enjoy it, and I do remember it. And a couple years ago, my wife and I watched it again, and yeah, I enjoyed it as much the second time, maybe even more than the first time. And so I was curious. We see so many remakes, but this is the 20th anniversary for this. So it's not just another remake because they think that they can, milk some more money out of it. This actually has a pretty big following, kind of a cult following. When I was researching this, I found out that there's actually Mean Girls Day, which is October 3rd, which is reference to a line in the movie where she says something like, it's the first time he asked me, what day is it? And I said, it's October 3rd. And so anyway, it's just funny, to find out these little things that the mega fans and stuff have created a day for it. We have that for Star Wars, but I had no idea there was a Mean Girls Day. But I guess people wear pink on that day and get together and talk about their favorite quotes or something. But so it really does have a following, and I see why. Because to me, it is a fairly timeless film. It's still funny, it's still relevant, but it's more than just funny. There are lessons to be learned from it, and it kind of gives a different twist on that high school experience, which everybody probably had some bad experiences in high school. I don't know. I like it because it kind of makes fun of and draws attention to those things, but also comes away with a decent message.
You bring up a good point of how do you kind of revitalize a film 20 years later and make it relevant. And I think one of the biggest is the use of social media. In this version, social media is everywhere. They're shooting with their phones. They're capturing all the performances. The mom is there with the selfie stick at the performance. It's being shared across the entire school as quick as they happen. Rumors get started. So it's very timely. And they brought that into the film in a couple of different ways. And one of them was using the TikTok aspect ratio there too.
Whenever there's a remake, especially when it's a classic, like how are they really going to do this? How are they going to make it fresh? But like you said, they have a Broadway play that's based on this. So they have a bunch of music that a lot of people haven't seen. And so it's a good way of exposing people to that too. And from the first moment when they start the film, you're like, okay, this is different. It's going to be the same story, but it's going to have enough fresh approaches to it that it was a new experience and a great new telling of the story, but definitely in a musical format, which was definitely refreshing. It wasn't just rehashing the same thing. There was a lot to it.
I did get to speak with the directors, Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr. And they both have a little bit of a different background. Samantha has a comedy writing background, and Arturo has a music video background. So this is a very well suited project for them, with it being both comedy and music driven. You don't really think of this as a visual effects film so much, but there were a couple of clever visual effects in it. What were your initial thoughts on the production, Heath?
So it had a lot of music videos in them, and each of them was treated basically as a music video. And so they had that production value, but several one-shots. So where Steadicam operator goes in and out and through and all around, and everything has to be choreographed just right. And they did an excellent job of that and just tied it together. I also really like the transitions from scene to scene. Like you and I talked before about the garage scene where they actually open up the garage and they go into the African savannah.
I assume that when the garage door opens, they're just going to a blue screen. The reality is that garage was a set that they built and brought to a landfill in New Jersey. And when the garage door opens and you see those weeds and everything growing, that's really live action landscape there. It's not Africa, it's New Jersey. Now, when you see the animals and stuff populating it, the giraffe, those are visual effects that are put in after the fact. A lot of it is shot anamorphic, and that's the footage that is grounded in reality when they're in the classroom and talking amongst the students. But then they go into these hyper stylized music video sections with, the lighting and the effects. And it changes. It goes back and forth between the widescreen with the bars and back to the anamorphic full screen on it.
If you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe and check out CinemaTechnica.com.
And check out postmagazine.com.
I thought it was really creative how they switched between the different formats, and there were some really great transitions as well, especially when you're coming from the African savannah and then into the tent, and then we transfer out of the tent, and then suddenly she's in the schoolyard. And once again, just these great transitions between there, really seamlessly. I don't know, I really appreciated how they transitioned from one scene to the next.
You'll notice that a lot of these shots are uninterrupted. There's a tremendous amount of choreography that goes on to make sure that the camera is not in the way of the performers. The performers are not, impeded by it or anything. It turns out that Arturo Perez Jr. worked with the Steadicam operator Arri Robbins in the past on a Justin Timberlake music video. And that music video was a one long shot music video also. So he has a history working with the cinematographer, Steadicam operator in that case, doing a one shot type of music video. So he has a history doing these things, and it really shows that they do it. They pointed to Karen's Sexy, I guess it was the second time, and hers was one long shot also, uninterrupted. And you wonder, are they going to be able to get away with this and do it, or are they going to have to use some kind of seaming to make the cuts come together? But no, they said it was a single one long shot. So credit to the Steadicam operator in that case.
Yeah, it was impressive. When you had told me that they had these really long shots, I was wondering, are they hiding some of the transitions? So I was watching pretty carefully. And I was like, man, no, I was thinking it looks like one shot. I don't see anywhere where they could have easily hidden a cut. And I was really impressed because, you have to have everything has to be working just perfect. All the choreography, the cameraman has to get his shots just right. Everything has to go just right. It's impressive.
There are dozens and dozens of kids in these scenes, so there's a lot of room for things to go wrong. And you're right, I was looking to see if they were hiding any of those transitions. And the way they'll do that is they'll follow somebody across the screen, or they'll come to a pole or something, and they'll use that as a transition. But no, I didn't see any of that. Real credit to getting that synchronized and working as well as it did.
Yeah, no, I was impressed. I was really impressed with the camera work. And, as an effects guy and a camera operator and having done a lot of effects stuff, I realized how complex this type of stuff is. And just really impressed with the quality of it. And it totally fed this story, it really worked. The whole story was well executed. And this is just one of those pieces that really made it really polished.
I want to bring a little attention to Bill Kirstein, who is the director of photography. He was using an Arri Alexa 35, which is a digital camera. So he's capturing it digitally, but they wanted to make it look like it was a filmic looking. And they worked with the team over at Harbor Picture Company in New York. And according to the colorist over there, Damien, the directors wanted the film to look as rich and filmic as possible while maintaining the realism. He used a film light baselight system on it to give it that effect. And he used one effect called halation. And that gives you a little bit of a halo glow in a couple of different scenes that you can control to give it this really polished, saturated, colorful look that you would expect from a film like this.
We've seen several films recently where they've been playing with different things being in black and white. And with Poor Things, we had these different weird lenses that were used and stuff. In this case, they played a lot more with changing aspect ratios from the vertical to even like one scene in different segments on the screen. And just like they really had a lot of fun changing between those aspect ratios like you talked about. And yeah, it's like all of it really added a level to the creativity and, I don't know, watchability.
I think that
I think
vertical format is very acceptable these days because of platforms like TikTok being in that, aspect ratio, that it's not jarring as it may have been in years past when you weren't expecting it.
It just worked. I really liked that it was not it was not like Poor Things where you really get thrown off by those things. This was a very, organic transition between these things. It worked really well, I think.
It was seamless. So Heath, when you look at the poster, Renee Rapp, she's kind of front and center. She plays Regina George. But I think Katie Angourie Wright's character, I don't know if she's considered the star or the lead in it. I'm curious as to who you saw as the star of this film, because I really feel that Renee Rapp, Regina George, kind of stole the show a little bit there. And as much as you're not supposed to like her, I kind of did find myself liking her a little bit. I don't know if I'm the odd man out in this case, but what are your thoughts on how the screen time was divvied up between the different characters there?
You're absolutely right. Definitely Katie is the traditional hero in this story. But there's arcs for other characters as well. And I was actually kind of thinking the same thing. I'm like, there's an aspect of Regina George where she fills in that role too. And I think there was some of that even in the original movie, but it seemed like it was more so in this. But I don't know. But it seemed like to me anyway. And so, yes, she's definitely bad and evil and stuff, but she does have an arc too, and there are times where you're kind of rooting for her after she gets humiliated and stuff. And I don't know, each of the characters got at least one song where they got to be the star of that song and kind of get to learn a little bit more about who that character really is. Regina George got multiple, and so she's definitely maybe an anti-hero that you're kind of also rooting for. You love to hate her, but you also kind of love the character too in a weird way, I don't know.
I mean, you look at this
character.
Yeah, you look at the story. Okay, this good girl is kind of beat down by these bullies in high school, and she ultimately gets her revenge. But that leads to what I thought was one of my favorite scenes in the film. They without getting too much into spoilers, they kind of, Katie has her revenge on Regina without Regina even knowing that it's being done to her. And when Regina ultimately realizes, she starts planning her revenge. And you see her on the treadmill and you see her kind of brooding. And that reminded me of a Rocky movie. I thought of Rocky 3 because the girls were all out partying and enjoying themselves and stuff and having a great time. And Regina is back at home and she's kind of brooding and she's on the treadmill and she's planning her revenge. And it reminded me of Rocky in the sense that Apollo and Rocky are out and they're celebrating. And Clubber Lang is in this sweaty gym and he's coming after the title. And I thought there was a parallel there. I don't know if it was intentional, but I saw something there. And that was like, you're kind of rooting for her to get her revenge now. So I thought that was kind of fun.
The other thing is, especially in the second half of the film and the third act in particular, Regina George becomes a lot more interesting, I think. After she gets hit by the bus, she's in a big neck brace thing where in the old movie she was I don't know, one of those things that isolated your head or whatever,
right,
but
the halo, yeah.
Man, there were so many laughs that you got from it. Of course, she was on medication at this point, but man, her character became really pretty likable and very funny. And I don't know, I got a lot of laughs out of this film in general.
So Heath, beyond Katie and Regina, who are obviously like the stars of the film, there are a lot of interesting characters there. I think of Damien. I think of like some of the laughs that he brought. The friends, Janice, like I said, Damien, Regina's friends, Gretchen and Karen. Karen had her own song. Janice had her own song. And you really learn a little bit about them and you kind of become fans of theirs as well. So there's really a lot of screen time being broken up amongst a lot of interesting characters there. But that's kind of what high school is about. It is a lot of interesting characters.
And I think maybe that's what some of the appeal of even the original film, but also definitely this one too, is that there are so many characters to like for their own strangeness. And they're not like just these surface characters where it's like, oh, she's the stupid girl. She's stupid, but she's actually really funny in her own way, and there's something driving each of these things. And so even the plastics have some sort of depth. I mean, that's probably a weird thing to say, but they do in a way. But there's lots of laughs and there's lots of characters to like even in their caricature aspects. There's a lot of characters to like. I was kind of curious, though, how well some of these characters were going to be able to be played by a different actor. Both Regina and Katie are going to be tricky ones to do, but all of them really are kind of iconic, and so you're like, how are they going to do it? But they were different enough from the originals, but had enough of the same elements that you accepted them as this character while recognizing that it's not the same exact character from the prior movie. And it worked. You're always wondering, how are you going to do this iconic character? But I think they actually did a good job of pulling it off. All of them, really.
Yeah, I agree. I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I don't typically seek out musicals, but I was curious about this one. I love stylized films. Again, I saw the press screening, and it was a well-attended press screening, and you could tell that the people in attendance, a lot of them were fans of the franchise, and they laughed and they applauded at different times. So I think the film is going to do well at the box office.
Yeah, so I was actually really looking forward to this film because I did enjoy the first one, and though I'm not a mega fan, I'd probably only seen it twice before this. I liked the idea because I knew it had been turned into a musical, and I'm like, yeah, this would be cool to see it that way. It'd be cool to see what refreshing take they have. There were a lot of laughs in it. I was expecting to enjoy it, and I also enjoyed it. There was definitely a lot of jokes meant for people who had seen the previous films, but a lot of them are funny, I think, even if you haven't seen it. There was a couple times where I laughed and nobody else laughed, and I'm wondering, was I the only one who picked up on that?
I had that happen to me once or twice too, where I laughed before everybody else, and I don't know if maybe I wasn't supposed to or not.
I guess I found some things funny that other people didn't necessarily catch or didn't find funny, but I think I just probably was the one who kind of really enjoyed the entire thing. Came out of the film feeling really happy with that performance and everything. It was a good film.
I think so. I think you come out of it, it's a feel-good film. It was fun. There were laughs. The music was good. The performances were good. The camera work and everything was interesting. It was a fun film. No qualms here.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you don't have to do qualifiers as to why people should or shouldn't see it. It's just like, yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good point.